My name is Ella Bennett. I am 33 years old. 17 years ago, my sister, Aubrey Bennett, planted forged receipts and fake emails in our father's construction company office to make it look like I had been skimming money and lying to clients for months. She convinced him I was a liability who would ruin everything he had built, so he cut all ties and told me I was no longer part of the family. Now I am sitting in the crowded emergency room waiting area of a Kansas City hospital while machines beep around my father after his sudden stroke, and my sister just leaned over to the doctor and said my past makes me too unreliable to help with any decisions about his care. My stomach twists, but I square my shoulders and tell myself, this time her lies will not bury me again. I'm ready to fight for the truth no matter what it costs. If you have ever watched a sibling rewrite your entire history just to push you out of the picture, hit that like button and tell me in the comments what they tried to take from you. I read every single one, and it means more than you know. That moment in the emergency room felt like the past had clawed its way back into the present without warning. I had driven straight from my apartment on the south side of Kansas City the second my stepmother, Diane, called me in a panic. My father, Kevin Bennett, had collapsed at the family construction yard earlier that morning, and the paramedics rushed him here. I arrived to find the whole group already gathered in the beige waiting area with its plastic chairs and flickering fluorescent lights. My partner, Owen Carter, stood beside me, his hand steady on my back, but my sister was already holding court near the doctor's station. She had that same composed smile she always wore when she was about to twist the knife. My grandmother, Gloria Evans, sat quietly in the corner, her purse clutched tight, while my best friend Madison Carter had rushed over from her shift at the nearby cafe to be moral support. Even Logan Carter, our longtime family friend who works as an attorney downtown, had shown up after I texted him the news. The doctor, a tall man named Dr. Philip Lang, was reviewing charts when my sister spoke up first. She initiated it, of course, her voice low, but carrying just enough for everyone to hear. Doctor, I think you should know my younger sister has a documented history of instability and poor judgment. 17 years ago, she nearly destroyed our father's business with her actions, and I would hate for that kind of stress to affect his recovery now. She glanced my way, eyes sharp with that familiar mix of concern and contempt, as if she were only protecting the family. My stepmother nodded along without a word, the way she always had. My father lay in the room beyond the glass, still unconscious, but I could see the monitor lines spiking slightly on the screen outside his door. I felt the words land like a slap, but I kept my voice even. That is not true, and you know it. I never touched a single dollar that wasn't mine. My partner squeezed my shoulder, and my best friend stepped closer, whispering that I did not have to engage. But my sister was not done. She turned back to Dr. Philip Lang and added, "We just want what is best for my father. My sister means well, but her track record speaks for itself." The doctor looked between us, clearly uncomfortable, and asked if there was any paperwork or prior medical notes that might help. That was when Logan Carter cleared his throat and suggested we all step into the small family consultation room down the hall so the doctor could focus. We moved, but the tension followed us like a storm cloud. Inside the room, with its single round table and faded blue walls, My sister kept the pressure going. She pulled out her phone and showed the doctor an old email chain she claimed proved my past issues, though I knew it was the same forged messages from all those years ago that she had never deleted. See, this is why I worry. My father trusted my sister once, and it almost cost him the entire company. My grandmother finally spoke up, her voice firm but tired, after 17 years of watching this same pattern. That was never proven, and you know the investigation cleared my granddaughter completely. My father was still out, but the mention of him made my chest tighten. I wanted him to wake up and finally see what had really happened back then. But the doctors had said the next 24 hours were critical. 17 years ago, the betrayal had unfolded on what felt like an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was 16 years old, working as an assistant project coordinator at my father's small construction firm in the suburbs of Kansas City. I had just landed a promotion that would have let me run my own crew on residential builds, something I had trained for since community college. My sister, 20 at the time, and already the office manager, had been smiling at family dinners and telling everyone how proud she was of me. That was her specialty, the warm front before the storm. One afternoon, I came back from a site visit to find my father waiting in his office with a stack of printed emails and receipts spread across his desk. He looked exhausted, the kind of tired that comes from betrayal, not work. My sister stood right behind him, her hand on his shoulder, like the devoted daughter. She spoke first, of course. My father found some irregularities in the accounts. It looks like payments were being diverted, and the messages point straight to you. She slid a printed email across the desk, one that showed a conversation with a fake vendor I had never contacted. The amounts added up to $29,000 over 5 months. I stared at the screenshots, my mouth dry. I had never seen those accounts. I tried to explain that I only handled the scheduling software, not the banking, but my father cut me off. Not now. Your sister brought this to my attention because she cares about this family. I cannot have someone undermining everything I built from nothing. His reaction was not the silent disappointment I expected. Instead, he stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loud against the tile, and changed the subject to how disappointed my late mother would have been if she could see this. It was his way of avoiding the real conversation, pushing the guilt onto me while my sister watched with that satisfied flicker in her eyes. I left the office that day with my personal items in a cardboard box and a knot in my stomach that would not loosen for weeks. My stepmother had been in the break room when I walked out, and she simply looked away, arms crossed, the same passive stance she always took. My grandmother was the first person I called once I reached my car. She drove over from her house on the north side of the city and met me at a quiet diner off the highway. "This smells like your sister's doing," she said over coffee, her voice steady. "She has always wanted to be the only one your father leans on." That was the beginning of my isolation. Word spread fast in the tight-knit construction community of Kansas City. Clients started canceling meetings with me, and a couple of my former co-workers suddenly stopped returning my texts. My sister had made sure the story traveled through the usual channels, framing me as the unreliable one who nearly tanked the family business. The next few months were a blur of job applications and sleepless nights in a tiny studio apartment I could barely afford on my new waitressing shifts. My partner, who I had been dating for only 6 months at the time, stuck by me and helped me update my resume, but even he could see the toll it was taking. Then my best friend showed up one evening with takeout and a fierce determination. "We are not letting her win," she said, pushing a folder across the table. Inside were copies of emails she had quietly gathered from the office before my sister could delete them. My best friend had worked part-time at the company back then, and she had seen my sister lingering at my desk the day the evidence appeared. "This is not over," she told me. Logan, our mutual friend who had just passed the bar exam, offered to look at everything pro bono. "If this is forgery, we can prove it," he said during our first meeting at his small office downtown. The investigation moved slowly at first. A local social worker named Amanda Torres from the county office got involved when my grandmother filed a formal complaint about the way the family business dispute had affected my mental health and housing stability. Amanda interviewed everyone, including my sister and my father. My sister stuck to her story with polished concern, but the receipts did not add up under closer scrutiny. Bank records showed the transfers had come from an account only my sister had access to during those exact weeks. Still, my father refused to fully accept it. When Amanda presented the findings, he reacted by abruptly standing and pacing the room, then changing the subject to how stressed the whole family had been since my mother's passing when I was 12. It was classic deflection, his way of avoiding the hard truth while my sister sat there looking wounded. "I was only trying to protect my father," she said, voice soft. The public exposure started then, small at first, a post on a local industry forum that questioned my professionalism, then a whispered rumor at a community chamber of commerce event. My reputation in Kansas City construction circles took a hit that followed me for years, even after I found steady work at a rival firm across town. Back in the hospital waiting area, the tension had only grown thicker. Dr. Philip Lang returned from checking on my father and pulled us aside again. My sister jumped in immediately. "Doctor, with everything in my sister's past, I think it is best if decisions go through me and my stepmother, for now." She looked at me with that fake sympathy that always masked the contempt. My grandmother stood up, her small frame rigid. "That is not fair, and you know it." My stepmother finally spoke, but only to murmur that she did not want any more drama. My father remained unconscious, but the monitors showed his heart rate climbing slightly, as if the raised voices were reaching him even through sedation. Logan stepped forward, then calm and professional. "Perhaps we should wait for a formal capacity assessment before anyone excludes family members." The doctor nodded, clearly relieved to have a neutral voice in the room, and suggested we give my father a few more hours before any major calls. I stepped outside for air, the cool Kansas City evening wrapping around me. My best friend followed, handing me a coffee from the cafeteria. "She is doing it again," she said quietly, "turning everyone against you with half-truths." My partner joined us, his arm around my shoulders. "You do not have to stay if it is too much." But I knew I could not leave. Not yet. The past 17 years had taught me that walking away meant letting my sister win the narrative completely. Inside, my sister was already on her phone, probably texting her partner Brandon Reed to update him on how she was handling the situation. I could feel the walls closing in the same way they had when the rumors first spread through the city years earlier. A text buzzed on my phone from my coworker, Rachel Hayes, who had heard through the grapevine that my father was ill. Thinking of you. Stay strong. Your sister is already spinning stories at the old job sites, another mini cliffhanger, in a day full of them. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, heart pounding, wondering how much more my sister would expose before this was over. The unknown number message stared back at me from the screen, the words burning like acid. I showed it to my best friend and my partner, my hands shaking slightly. Before they could respond, the nurse called us back into the room because my father was more alert. My sister was already there, leaning over the bed, her voice low, but carrying that edge of control. Doctor, with everything in my sister's past, I think it is time we finalize on the power of attorney through me and my stepmother. We cannot let old patterns risk his recovery. She initiated it again, the words slicing straight at me, while she smiled at the doctor like the responsible one. My partner tightened his grip on my shoulder, but my sister kept going, turning to face me directly, with that cold sarcasm she reserved for these moments. You always show up when things get messy, but we both know your judgment is what got us here in the first place. Remember how close you came to ruining everything 17 years ago. My father, still weak from the stroke, reacted in a way that shocked everyone in the room. He suddenly pushed himself up a little on the pillows, his good hand clenching the sheet, and let out a defensive outburst that cut through the tension like a crack in ice. Enough with the old fights. I am lying here fighting to stay alive, and you are still doing this. His voice was raspy, but raw with frustration, the kind that came from years of buried regrets finally surfacing in the worst possible moment. It was not enough to stop her, though. My stepmother looked startled and tried to smooth things over by murmuring that we all needed to stay calm for his sake, but the damage was done. My grandmother stood taller, her eyes sharp as she whispered to me that this was the moment to push back. The confrontation exploded right there beside his hospital bed. My sister did not back down. She leaned in closer to the doctor and my father, her tone laced with long-held resentment. My father, you are confused right now, but the truth is my sister's instability nearly cost you $29,000 over 5 months back then. The forged emails, the diverted payments, it all pointed to her. I have been protecting this family for years while she played the victim. She initiated every jab, each one more personal than the last, exposing years of contempt in front of the medical staff and our small group. Logan stepped forward with his calm legal tone, reminding everyone that the old investigation had cleared me completely and that no formal charges had ever been filed, but my sister talked right over him. Legal technicalities do not change what happened. My sister walked away from the family business and left us to clean up her mess. Now she wants a say in my father's care. That is rich. I felt my chest tighten with the same raw shock I had felt 17 years earlier when my sister first planted the evidence in my father's construction office. The isolation that followed was brutal. Word spread fast through the Kansas City construction network. Clients canceled meetings, and my coworker, Rachel Hayes, suddenly stopped answering calls after my sister reached out to former colleagues with her version of events. I ended up taking a job as a marketing coordinator at a rival home builder across town, but the rumors followed me for years. My best friend showed up one night with takeout and copies of emails she had gathered quietly insisting we fight it. Logan reviewed everything pro bono and said we had a strong case for forgery if we pushed. A county social worker named Amanda Torres interviewed the whole family after my grandmother filed a complaint about the way the dispute had left me without stable income or housing. My sister stuck to her story with polished concern, but the bank records showed the transfers originated from an account only she had accessed during those exact weeks. Now, in the hospital room, the same pattern was repeating, only this time the stakes were my father's life. My sister kept initiating turning to the doctor again. With my father's condition, we cannot risk any added stress from my sister's history. I am requesting the temporary power of attorney paperwork right now, so my stepmother and I can make the decisions without complications. My father tried to speak again, but his words came out slurred and weak, and he sank back against the pillows, his outburst from earlier leaving him drained. The monitor beeped a sharp warning again, and the nurse asked everyone to step back while they adjusted his medication. That was the first mini cliffhanger of the afternoon. My phone vibrated in my pocket once more. This time, it was a text from my current boss at the home builder, asking if everything was okay because he had received an anonymous call earlier that morning reminding him of my past issues in the construction industry. The message ended with a question about whether I needed time off. My sister had clearly reached out again, spreading the story to my workplace, just like she had 17 years ago. I showed the screen to my best friend and my partner in the hallway, my voice barely above a whisper. My best friend's face hardened. She is not stopping until she erases you completely. My partner suggested we have Logan file an immediate objection to any power of attorney move, but I could feel the walls closing in. The second mini cliffhanger came when a hospital administrator arrived with the paperwork my sister had already requested. She had moved fast printing forms and filling them out while we were in the hallway. "This is for my father's best interest," she said, when we walked back in, initiating the final push with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "My sister you can visit, but the decisions need to stay with people who have not caused this family so much pain." The room went quiet. My grandmother tried to argue that the old accusations had been disproven, but my sister cut her off with another psychological jab. "Grandma, you have always taken her side, but the facts are the facts. My sister walked away once. She does not get to walk back in and play hero now." My father was too weak to outburst again, his eyes closing as the medication took hold, leaving us all in a heavy silence. My stepmother finally spoke up, her voice shaky but firm. Maybe we should wait for him to be fully awake. It was the closest she had ever come to pushing back, but it was not enough. The doctor looked uncomfortable and said the hospital would review the request, but needed clear next of kin consensus. I stood there, the weight of 17 years pressing down, and made the painful choice that still sits heavy in my chest even now. I stepped back. I told Logan not to fight the paperwork. I told my sister I would not contest the power of attorney if it meant my father got the care he needed without more drama. "I am done letting this destroy what I have built," I said, quietly, my voice steady even though my hands trembled. "You win this one, but it is the last time you pull me into your version of the truth." My sister looked surprised for a split second, then satisfied, as if she had finally gotten what she wanted all along. My grandmother tried to talk me out of it in the hallway afterward, but I shook my head. I cannot keep fighting her and still have a life. Not if it means my job, my peace, everything I worked for, gets dragged through the mud again. My partner and my best friend walked me out of the hospital into the Kansas City, evening their support, the only thing keeping me upright. I drove home alone, the city lights blurring through tears I refused to let fall until I was inside my apartment. My father stabilized over the next week, but the power of attorney went through exactly as my sister wanted. She made the medical calls, she controlled the updates, and she made sure I received only the bare minimum of information. The rumors at my job quieted after I explained the situation to my boss, but the damage lingered in the form of sidelong glances and extra scrutiny on my projects. My sister never reached out to apologize. She never had to. She had what she always craved: control. I still visit my father when I can, but the visits feel hollow now. He is recovering slowly at a rehabilitation center, and the stroke has left him quieter, more reflective. He has never directly addressed what happened 17 years ago or what unfolded in that hospital room. My sister visits too, of course, always the picture of devotion in front of the staff. I set firm boundaries, refusing to be in the same room with her, but the cost is real. I lost the chance at any final, honest conversation with my father. I lost the illusion that family could ever be simple again. I gained my peace, but it came with a loneliness that echoes in quiet moments. Choosing myself meant stepping away from the fight, and that choice left me standing alone on the other side of the glass, watching a family that no longer had space for me. Some betrayals do not end with justice or dramatic revenge. They end with a quiet decision to protect what little you have left, even if it means letting the person who hurt you keep the upper hand. My sister still believes she won, and in many ways she did. But I am 33 years old, building a life with my partner that does not revolve around her games, and that has to be enough. The storm I walked through 17 years ago redirected me to something better, even if the path was lonely. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever had to make the painful choice to step back from family to save yourself, drop a comment below and tell me how you found the strength. I read every single one,